today, there was some agreement on the 15% global tax. Could you explain what that is and what it could mean for the US?
Oh, yeah. This just came out literally just before the show started. I was reading an article on this. It's been talked about for a while now. So the concept is, and this is very different, and I think this is very exciting actually. The concept is that the companies, and they've now said big companies, so small companies will be excluded from this. Companies will have to pay a minimum of 15% tax in the country where the sale was generated. So think about this for a minute. So if you're a big company and you sell to U.S. customers, but you have plants in Ireland, Ireland has a much lower tax bracket than U.S. They, through series of maneuverings, might be able to claim a lot of that revenue in Ireland at this lower tax rate. And of course, then the U.S., who has created this big consumer base, isn't getting the tax dollars for that. And so what that's a huge deal. So think about it. The US is the number one consumer country in the world. And we have this scenario where we've got all kinds of money floating outside the country paying taxes in other tax havens. And now they're going to make it an even 15%. So even Ireland is 15%. And that would be unbelievable because it would bring in, I think, a huge amount of money into the U.S. Treasury in new tax revenues from these companies. Um, and it creates a scenario where you're not, Janet Yellen's been talking about a race to the bottom where eventually there's a country out there with a 3% rate and everybody's got their business there. And so I think they've got agreements with basically 95% of the gross domestic product of the world in the agreement right now. And it's taken a while to get a couple of these countries to sign on. I don't know what the next step is, honestly, because it just came out, and I don't know the details, and they haven't mentioned any yet either. I think conceptually, they're trying to work on this from a high level standpoint, and then we'll get some more of the details that come out for how that works. But you have an awful lot of big companies here in the U.S. and abroad selling a lot of products to U.S. consumers that are not paying taxes at a proper level, in my opinion, here in the U.S. And so that would change with this, in my opinion, from what I've read. So I actually think it's a really exciting arena. We'll have to see how it plays out, but there is one part of it that'll be a little interesting in that it is a possible increase in taxation to some of these companies, and that affects stock price, right? So we'll have to see what that means, right? So if a company was paying 6% and now they're paying 15, that's less revenues. I mean, sorry, less earnings because the higher tax rate. So, and higher tax rates aren't awful for the stock market. If you look back over a period of time, they can be short-term, problems until things get worked out. But it is something to consider as far as what impact that might have on the stock market. But overall, from what I've read, I think it's a really great concept. It would solve a lot of problems that have been happening.